Good afternoon to everyone who has already joined. We will just wait for a couple more minutes for more people to join. So it's your last chance to grab a glass of water or make yourself a cup of coffee. And we will start in a couple of minutes. Okay, I think we are good to go, and everyone who wanted to join this session joined. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Markers of ARM workshop. Hope everyone is fine and comfortable at their work or home offices, wherever you are connecting to this webinar from. Hope you all have a stable internet connection, prepared yourself something to drink, and are ready to have a conversation about gambling-related harm minimization and markers of ARM. So let's begin. During this session, we will talk a lot about behavioral psychology, gambling patterns, and prevention of gambling activity escalation. We as humans, we love patterns. They make us feel comfortable and safe. The more patterns we have, the more stable our life feels. So the combination of all these patterns and routines creates our comfort zones. And of course, these zones can expand or shrink depending on your current environment, on your ambition, and on your current mental state. As long as these patterns do not harm us in any way and do not invade any other area of our lives, we are good. The same works with gambling. As long as you remember that it is a form of entertainment, we keep it under control and we stop before we get carried away, we are all right. We are players who are exercising principles of responsible gaming. And if you think about it, this trade of pattern behavior makes it easier for us as gambling professionals and as operators to understand if something goes wrong. If a player went outside of their usual behavior and started spending more money, more time, more than they usually do. So those red flags that show us that a player increased their activity and might be at risk of developing a problem is what we call markers of harm. We will start our conversation about markers of harm with a short introduction to Maltese gambling regulation in regards to this topic, just to understand what we are expected to do. Then we will dive into the basics of gambling-related harm and talk about what it is, why it happens, and what impact it can have on players' life. After that, we will dive into markers of harm themselves, the types, the categories of markers, in order to make sure we know how to identify players that might be experiencing gambling-related harm, and to make sure that we do it in the most efficient way. And we will finish our workshop with one of the most important subjects of responsible gaming, which is customer interaction. Because contacting customer in the right way at the right time is the main tool we have at our hands to prevent and minimize gambling related harm. It's the main tool to educate our customers and guide them to safer gambling. So let's start with what the Malta Gaming Authority tells us about gambling related harm. As we all know, the Maltese gambling regulation published some new requirements that came into force just a couple of months ago in January. The most important part of these amendments covers operators' obligation regarding responsible gaming, as well as problematic behavior identification by implementing markers of harm. According to these, player protection measures should consist of the following: promoting responsible gaming through your website, customer communication, marketing materials, etc., in any way you can promote it. Then having RG policies and procedures in place, keeping record of any RG investigation, any RG intervention, any decision taken. Then having measures and procedures to identify problem gamblers and players who might be at risk of experiencing gambling-related harm. This can be done by implementing markers of harm and setting relevant policies and procedures. We will talk about these in detail during the session. The next step of player protection is obviously regular training of all customer-facing personnel, and especially responsible gaming teams, so they know how to handle different responsible gaming cases. Making sure we have all responsible gaming tools in place, including pop-up reminders of time spent. The next one is providing customers with the information about their gambling activity, the history of their deposits, wins, losses, etc. And the last one, we are now required to keep record of all player interactions for at least 2 calendar years. Moving on to the markers of harm and policies and procedures, operators are expected to implement at least 5 markers of harm to their system. They are, first of them is the amount and frequency of deposits and wagers. Here, the regulator allows us to choose to track either deposits or wagers, but they also point out that it would be great if we could do both. The next marker is the reversal of pending withdrawal. Although the MGA doesn't specify, I can see 2 ways to trigger this particular thing. It is the amount a player withdraws, and the number of reversed withdrawals. Both of these can indicate that player is starting to experiencing gambling-related harm. The third marker is the use of multiple payment methods. This one is pretty straightforward and clear. The more methods player uses to deposit, the more risks they have. And it is not only from responsible gaming point of view, but also from AML point of view, especially if customer uses a lot of e-wallets, some prepaid cards, and non-personalized payment methods like PaySafe cards or gift cards, vouchers, etc. The next marker is communication-based markers. If the previous 3 markers could be set to be triggered automatically, just run through your system, this marker requires some human intervention because we need to understand whether a customer is showing any warning signs during the interaction. It could be constant bonus requests, complaints about RNG, any other warning signs. These can show us that a player might be losing control over their gambling and already experiences some sort of financial difficulty or maybe emotional distress. We will talk about these warning signs a little bit later. And the last marker offered by the regulator is the use of responsible gaming tools. Constant change of deposit or loss limits might indicate a gambling problem and show that the player is continuously breaking their own budget, their own gambling budget, or their own set limits. The same works for breaks from games. Although it is a good sign for us that player knows when to stop and is willing to take a break from games to cool off, to reflect on their gambling. Just like with anything else, too much can be too much. If we can see that a customer spends significant amount of money in a short period of time and requests a break from games just to come back and repeat this behavior over and over again, it is not a good sign, and it is a big sign that something is wrong and person just cannot stop gambling. Now we know what markers the MGA wants us to use, but we still don't have a full understanding of what gambling related harm is and why people experience it. We also need to learn how to spot these warning signs to be able to act in the right way and to be able to act in timely manner. And this is exactly what we are going to talk about next. Gambling related harm and its impact. To make sure our player protection measures are effective and show positive results on player behavior, first and foremost, we need to understand the core and specifics of gambling-related harm. We need to understand what gambling-related harm is, what could be the reasons of it, where could it come from, what impact it can have on someone's life, and the ways to identify the problem. So what is gambling related harm? Gambling becomes a problem when a player starts experiencing some negative effects from their play. It can affect any area of their life. It can be their work, their relationship with family, with their friends, their financial situation, and even their physical and mental health. Sometimes people neglect some basic physical needs like sleep or showering, personal hygiene, just to play a little bit more. So when this change can be quite drastic, as you can see from the chart presented on this slide. And in extreme cases, it can even lead to gambling addiction. Most of the times, the person doesn't even realize when they start losing control, or they could be in denial there is a problem. And this is why we need to act responsibly and interact with the player, offering them tools available and making them reflect on their own gambling activity. To help our players stay in control of their gambling, we need to understand why this happens, why they start losing control, and why they start experiencing gambling related harm. So when does gambling become a problem? When a player starts spending more time, when a player keeps thinking about gambling, keeps thinking about the winning strategies, thinking how they come from work as fast as possible just to play their favorite slots. And obviously, if they spend more money gambling, if they spend the uncomfortable amount of money playing. But just these three areas, just three indicators, these three indicators are not enough to say that there is a gambling problem. It could be a newly registered player who is just getting used to your website, trying new games, and once they are comfortable and trust you as an operator, they start increasing their time and money they spend with you. Or it could be, for example, a high value customer who doesn't have any difficulties in spending a little bit more money or a little bit more time playing. So gambling becomes a problem then when one of these three elements or all of them have a negative effect on person's life. If they affect a player in any way, shape, or form, and make them uncomfortable, make them disturbed, make them use more money than they are willing to use while gambling, we can talk about gambling related harm. This is a sign of gambling related harm. What could be the reasons of developing a problem? Scientists that work in the area of addiction, and here we are talking about all addictions in general, like substance addictions, alcohol, drug, etc., and non-substance like gambling, shopping, gaming. So they combined all these addictions in their research and managed to define three main reasons of developing a problem. First reason is biological, which is basically person's predisposition to developing an addiction. It is something in our genes. The second one is psychological. It refers to our emotional states. If we are suffering from addiction, anxiety, if we are just sad or taking medications that can influence our emotional state and decision making, it can play a role in developing problem gambling. And the third reason is social cultural. Basically, this means cultural acceptance. If it is okay in a community to play slots, or if there is a family that organizes family poker tournaments every Saturday night, and their kids are seeing their parents playing and enjoying themselves and laughing, they are more likely to have a perception, to have a positive perception of gambling since early age, and they are more likely to get involved in gambling once they are adults. Again, just like with the gambling problem, just these three areas, just these three reasons are not enough to become an addict or develop some serious problematic gambling experience. There is, in most of the cases, there is a trigger that pushed people to lose control. It can be some strong emotional event, or for example, it could be a big win. We can see this a lot as operators, that big win leads to customers go all rogue and spend all their winnings trying to chase bigger winnings, and then trying to chase losses. So this event, this big emotional event trigger can lead to problem gambling. And so in order to stop problematic behavior and understand the problem better, we also need to consider some negative impact gambling can have, just so we can recognize it while talking to our players, to our customers over the phone, over the email, etc. So as we can see on the right side of the screen, It can affect, as I already said, multiple areas of a person's life, starting with personal. Player can experience more stress, anxiety, even fall into depression, and spending a lot of time and a lot of thought with gambling can also result in poor health. Obviously, it can affect players' financial situation. It can lead to debts, bankruptcies, financial difficulties. It can affect jobs and studies, since person is always thinking about gambling and maybe has lack of sleep and any other signs, negative signs of gambling. They can also be less performant at their job, or lose their job, or etc., etc. So and obviously, since gambling becomes a part of their life, it also influences their interpersonal relationship, their relationship with family and friends. And in extreme situations where the customer, the player, a person who is a problematic gambler can even fall into some criminal activities, some stealing money, some violence, because they are constantly in stress. But this is like very extreme, severe cases. Just to have a little break from the learning material, let's consider two player examples and see who could develop the problem of gambling dependency. So first we have Susan. She's a mother of two. She heard about gambling from a friend of her husband, and she thinks she can make some money out of it. She doesn't think she can develop any gambling related problem because she doesn't really care about gambling. She just wants to make some money. And the second player is Dave. He's experienced player. He's semi-professional poker player. He knows his odds. He knows his statistics, the amounts he wins, the amounts he loses while playing. So he manages his game. And he says that he cannot develop any gambling problem because he never had, and there is nothing to worry about. He knows what he's doing. So who could develop gambling dependency? Obviously, many of you can say that it is Susan, because Susan is new to gambling. She considers gambling as a source of income, which is a big no-no. She doesn't know what she's doing. But as we already learned, anyone could develop a problematic gambling behavior. It depends on multiple factors, including players' personality, their current environment, their mental state in this particular moment. So both Susan and Dave can develop problematic gambling behavior, just because no one is safe from this. Although there are groups that are at higher risk of experiencing gambling related harm, like, for example, young adults, we still cannot define a set of personal qualities or traits, a list of player characteristics that will tell us for sure okay, this player will develop a negative relationship with gambling. This is why it is important to monitor our players and to spot any behavioral escalations at early stages, while we still can educate our customers to play responsible and to make informative decisions. We as operators, as gambling professionals, as industry, should aim to create a sustainable player base with stable spending levels, while increasing customer satisfaction and building trusting relationship with our players. This is the main idea, the main principle, the main goal of responsible gaming in general. So what happens if we do not spot the increase of gambling behavior in time? Or maybe we just missed it due to some technical or operational restrictions. Saying that, I would like to draw your attention to the gambling addiction cycle. Most of you probably have seen it multiple times, but I think it is important to remind ourselves how gambling addiction works. And it is also very important to note, once again, that only a small percentage of people who are at risk of having a gambling problem or who are experiencing gambling related harm will actually develop an addiction. So let's keep that in mind and move on to considering to having a look at this slide. As I mentioned before, it all starts with emotional trigger, with some big emotional event. Then a person starts gambling, playing, and they experience adrenaline rush. All the happiness hormones like dopamine and serotonin start flushing in their brains, and they are enjoying themselves, enjoying playing. But as with any addiction, the more you play, the more you get used to that level of excitement. It becomes a routine, a ritual, and eventually it will require more and more effort, money, and time to get the same level of rush. After it becomes a habit, and usually it becomes the only hobby person has and the main point of their interest, they develop a dependency. They develop gambling dependency, and they cannot stop playing that easily anymore. Eventually, the person hits their own bottom and understands that they do have a problem, and they feel guilty for spending that much money, neglecting people, maybe doing something they shouldn't have done because they needed to gamble. And at this point, they try to break the circle and seek for help. Unfortunately, not every addicted person can actually break the cycle, so they fall into harmful behavior again with the next emotional trigger. Saying that, going through the addiction cycle, what we as gambling professionals, as operators, can do in this situation Well, first and foremost, we need to prevent these people from playing with us. Allowing problem gamblers to play with us will just bring unnecessary litigations, problems with regulatory bodies, bad image, and many other negative consequences. Another thing that it's worth mentioning is early problem detection. If we build our systems in a way we are able to detect behavioral escalation at the adrenaline rush stage or even at ritual stage, with the right education and support, we are able to guide our players into safer gambling and make sure they will never lose control and they will never fall into addiction. So, but how can we do it? How do we educate? How do we lead customers to safer gambling? We need to base our interaction, our policies, our procedures on three main responsible gaming principles. First is educating and raising gambling awareness in general. Educating our customer base since the beginning of their journey that gambling should be enjoyed safely, explaining them what gambling related harm is, what tools you have, how to find information about your responsible gaming policy, how to get easy access to your RG pages, etc. The second principle is protecting customers from gambling-related harm. For this, we need markers of harm, and we need to monitor customer activity and look for some abnormal behavior and some sudden spikes. And the third one is building trust and relationship with the player. I already mentioned it a little bit ago, but it is very important to build trust and relationship with the player, because if we don't have this relationship, if we just tell customer, oh, we saw you increased activity, don't you think you deposit too much, we impose these limits, we impose that limits, you should listen to us because we can see you are losing control. Obviously, this way of interacting with customer will never work. They will just neglect all the emails and react to it negatively and just close their account and move to someone else. So making your customer feel that you care about their well-being and it is in your best interests to keep them healthy in terms of gambling relationship and keep them in control of their gambling is actually beneficial for you as an operator, because like this you can support sustainable customer base, which we all are trying to achieve. And we can also reduce gambling related harm in general. Saying that, we can finally move to the most exciting part of this training, which is problem identification and markers of harm. Talking about problem identification, we need to remember that different groups of players, different personalities require different approach and different level of interaction. Some of the players just need to be guided to your responsible gaming page that has some useful information or gambling tips or information about responsible gaming tools, while others needs to be recommended to set deposit limits and need to be shown that they increase their activity so they can reflect on their gambling or even take a break or self-exclude in some situations. Let's also not forget that young adults and senior players are at higher risk of experiencing gambling-related harm due to their financial situation and mental capabilities. So we need to have a little bit of special care to these groups of customers. And with that in mind, let's move to the warning signs. There are multiple signs that can show us that something is wrong, something is out of ordinary, and that can indicate that a player can experience some sort of gambling related harm. These warning signs mostly work for customer interaction when you are over the phone with a customer or during the email conversation. They showed signs that they are preoccupied with gambling, or they hiding or lying about their gambling, that they say, oh, my wife doesn't know that I gambled, or they do not realize they are in denial of their actual spending levels. If you can see that customer is chasing losses, that they increase their deposits and they lose them right away, then they double up, and this goes up and up and up. This is the huge sign. This is a huge sign of chasing losses. When a person is restless and irritable when not gambling, when they use gambling to escape from reality, from their problems at work, with family, etc. When they repeatedly try to stop, when they keep asking for breaks from game, or they keep changing their deposit limits or wagering limits, but they keep canceling the previous limits that were lower and just max them out or set a much higher limit. When a customer mentions that they borrow money for gambling, when they increase their bets, obviously, and when they mention that due to gambling, they have some problems with their relationship and job. And again, a little bit of a situation with two players, just to wrap up the warning signs we just went through. Here we have two players as well. One of them is a VIP player. They claim that they know what they are doing and they have enough money not to care about how much they lose. And the second one is a lady of respected age. And she says that she played a lot, she played for days, and she lost a lot, but she can feel that the next spin will be the winning one, that her luck is right around the corner, and she will win eventually. So both of these situations can be considered as warning signs. In the first example, even if a player does not experience any financial difficulty, if they don't have any problems with the amount of money they spend, it doesn't mean that they do not experience any other gambling related harm. If they don't have problems with sleep or health because of gambling, if they don't have problems with work or their personal relationship. So just being okay money wise while gambling heavily doesn't mean that you're not experiencing any gambling related harm. And in the second situation, we all know that this doesn't work, that there is such thing as random number generator, and the outcomes of the games are always unpredictable. So yes, there is such thing as return to player, and eventually she should win, but is it worth it for her losing days after days and spending her savings or pension? Obviously not. So we should always advise our customers that gambling is the games of chance, and there is no guaranteed winning, and there is no such thing as luck, or you cannot have some sort of tactic or methodology to fool the slot, or do something to make it a winning spin. Nowadays, markers of arm are getting adopted by more and more regulated markets. Different gambling authorities and different gambling operator associations define and recognize different sets of markers of arm. So today there are hundreds of them, and so all of them are used by gambling industry in one way or another. So I decided to show you. I decided that it would be useful for you to see some examples of markers of arm that are outside of the 5 defined by the MGA. So, for example, the marker spend from norm, which basically compares your average spend with your current spend. Deposit count increase, obviously, the more times customer deposits, the more risk their gambling activity, their deposit activity represents. Decline deposits, risky payment methods, deposits during session, daily stakes, uh, games played increase. Games played increase is a very curious one, because usually regular players stick to a set of the games they play. So they play the same slots, or if we are talking about sports betting, they play on the same sports, on the same leagues, etc., etc. But if you notice drastic increase in games played, if you can see that the customer started placing bets to sports they never played before, and that doesn't make sense for them, like third division of tennis league in Africa, for example. So, and you have a customer from Italy, for example, obviously it doesn't really relate to them that much. So it can indicate some problematic behavior, because sometimes when we talked about adrenaline rush and keep getting more and more bets to reach the same level of excitement. So in this case, it might indicate that the customer actually tries to cover the void he has from their usual products, or the products they usually bet on are already not enough to feel the same level of excitement, the same level of adrenaline, etc. And the last marker is late night play. Obviously, if you see that the customer plays all night long, and you know from their occupation or from the conversation with them that they have a day job, it is a big sign that eventually customer will experience gambling related harm, and this is not normal to play all night long, especially if you have a day job. Talking about markers of harm in general, they are based on 4 customer characteristics. First of them is demographic, like how long do we have them as a customer, as a player, customer age, customer gender, their occupation, their marital status, do they have kids? These are not markers per se, but they can give you some insight of customer risk level. The second set of characteristics is gambling behavior. Obviously, unusual gaming patterns, unusual game choices. If players started playing in unusual time of the day or day of the week, etc., etc. So everything related to abnormal activity, abnormal gambling activity can become a marker to identify possible problematic behavior. The third one is account behavior. So how customer or how player usually deposits or cashes out, what was their normal behavior, how much they deposited, if they increase their deposits, if they increase frequency of their deposits, etc., etc., and the same with cash outs. All of these can be considered as markers of harm. And the last characteristic is relationship with customer service. Here we can consider the frequency of contact, the type of contact, the tone customer uses to speak to customer support. Obviously, if they keep asking for bonuses or say something, oh, I don't have money anymore, but I still want to play, just get me some bonus so I continue playing, or I continue wagering my previous bonus, or they keep complaining about RNG or about some system bugs, etc., etc. So all of these can indicate that a person is not okay with their gambling, and it should be considered in overall scoring, risk scoring of the customer, and markers of harm. So now we know what markers of harm are, but how do we use them? So there are a couple of ways you can implement markers of harm into your operation, into your systems. So first is you just pick a marker and define hard thresholds for each risk level. For example, we pick up the reverse withdrawal marker and we set how much would be the low risk, the medium risk, the high risk, and the very high risk. Obviously, you cannot just make these numbers up, you need to first analyze your customer base and define the average reverse withdrawal. The second way to utilize markers of harm is to not have the hard thresholds, but to compare customer behavior, current behavior, with their previous behavior, with their norm. So in this case, we would say if the customer increased their reverse withdrawals by 50% comparing to their normal behavior, it would be low risk. If they increased their reverse withdrawals by 100%, it would be medium risk, etc., etc. The third way to utilize markers of harm is to combine scores for each individual marker and set the total marker of harm score, the total risk level of for the customer. So for example, if the customer scores one low risk in reverse withdrawals, medium risk in amounts deposited, and medium risk in RG tools usage, the average score would represent medium to high risk for this particular customer. So depending on overall customer risk score, you will have different level of interaction. So if you consider these markers separately, you might have had like lower level of interaction, just advising customer about your responsible gaming policy, then like actually the best solution for this customer would be advise them to set some particular limits. And the third way you can utilize your markers of harm and to implement them in your system is the combination of any of these three methods. I think this is the most effective method of them all. And at Crucial Compliance, we have developed our own advanced markers of harm model, which currently consists of 27 markers that track changes in customers' own behavior. And our model also utilizes 10 individual markers, 10 individual triggers that allow us to spot some suspicious behavior of newly registered customers, or customers that just came from a long break or from an exclusion. So obviously, player protection is not a finish line. Like you set these 5 markers of harm, you set the risk buckets for each of them, and you are happy and they stay like this forever. It is actually a process, and we need to keep analyzing our customer behavior, and we need to implement new markers that increase our model effectiveness and increases detection of customers that might be at risk. So in that sense, Maltese regulation is just at the beginning of the marker of harm journey, but it is a good start. And we can say from our own experience, markers of harm do work, and they do decrease player churn and numbers of self-exclusions. And combined with the right interaction approach, it can also reduce overall player risk levels, and it can teach your players to make informed decisions about their gambling. and it can teach them how to use responsible gaming tools correctly. So ultimately, markers of harm allow operators to create a more sustainable customer base, more sustainable businesses, and support their responsible gaming commitments and their social responsibility programs, and increase their images as responsible operators that care about their players. So it doesn't matter which method of implementing markers of harm you choose. It all depends on your system capabilities and your operations. Putting customers in different risk buckets actually allows you to personalize their messages and address the issue right away, not just randomly tell to the customer, oh, use the responsible gaming tool. No, we can actually tailor the tone and the messaging itself to different markers of harm and to different risk levels. And this showed to be very successful. So depending on the risk level, interaction can alter player behavior. So for low risk, for example, you can just have NRG awareness email saying, oh, as a responsible gaming operator, as a responsible operator, we actually provide our customers with all the tools to help them manage their play, and send the link to responsible gaming page. For medium risk, you can inform players about responsible gaming tools available. And since you know which trigger actually was hit, you can personalize this responsible gaming tool. So if you can see that customer increased their deposits, you can advise them to set deposit limits. If you can see that the customer increased their wagers, you can advise them to set loss limits, etc., etc. So for higher risk, you would, in some cases, you would impose limits to customer account, and for very high risk, again, in some extreme cases, you would even apply self-exclusion to customer account on their behalf. So different interactions alter player behavior, and again, it increases trust in you as an operator, and it creates a more stable player ecosystem. And the last part of our today's session is responsible gaming interaction, because this is what is important. This is what players see and hear, and this is what can actually affect their activity and make them think about their gambling. So responsible gaming interaction or responsible gaming communication can change player behavior, can make them reflect on their gambling, and let them choose their games a little bit more carefully, or decrease their bet amounts. It can change their deposit activity. It can increase their G tools usage for all your customer base. It can increase RG awareness, so your customers become more aware of how to keep their gambling at comfortable levels and not lose control. RG interaction will allow you to build trusting relationship with the customer and create a more sustainable customer base. I keep saying this, but this is what is really important, and this is where the whole gambling industry is moving to. Let's not forget that interaction with the player doesn't stop with just emails, chats, or phone calls. We interact with them in many ways, and this communication is constant. We don't need to invent a bicycle. We have all the tools at hand. We can interact with the customer through our gaming interface, through our web pages, through pop-ups, through banners, buttons, links, anything, through game design, through gaming position, and putting more putting slots that represent more risk a little bit further away. Having a simple navigation system to responsible gaming pages, or easy instructions how to set any limits. And overall, your interface, your design, these can all be tweaked towards responsible gaming, safer gambling, without actually losing anything profit-wise. Like just a little bit of tweaking, just a little bit, just a small messaging here or there, just having responsible gaming link, responsible gaming page link right there, one click away, not 15 clicks away. These small changes can actually make difference. And here are some examples of what you can do. You can design comprehensive, simple to read, maybe even interactive responsible gaming page. You can place information about your tools, your policies in the places where players can reach them and read them easily. You can promote responsible gaming. You can notify and warn customers of any behavioral escalations. Again, this leads to markers of harm and activity monitoring in general. Obviously implementing RG tools, etc., etc. So all these little categories, this is what creates a responsible ecosystem and sustainable gambling environment. And finishing our session, coming back to markers of harm and tools we have available, just want to repeat once again, let's not forget about message personalization. We have all the instruments that can make our interaction effective. We know what triggers customer hit. We know what risk level they have. So we can tweak our tone, our language, and we can make sure that we recommend customers to use RG limits that are actually relevant to them, and maybe advise some gambling tips to address the increase of their behavior. And I would like to just leave this slide with the gambling tips while we are having our Q&A session. So just for you to have it in front of you and remind yourself some gambling tips that you can use to in communication with your customer. And yeah, I am here to address any questions you might have, so feel free. Anyone? No one? I guess it was a lot of information in one go, and we spent a little bit more than 1 hour to go through all this information about gambling related harm and markers of harm and how to use them. So I understand it can be a little bit too much. So do we have any questions?
No questions, but thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you. And if we
Yeah, thank you very much.
if we don't have anything to have a conversation about, I guess we are good. Thank you for attending this session. It was my pleasure, and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.